The funeral chapel went silent the moment my mother's voice sliced through the stillness. "You changed your name." The words hung there, not a question, an accusation. Head swiveled in my direction. Dad's fingers gripped the memorial program until it creased. My brother froze mid-laugh in the doorway. I settled into my seat in the second row, the program still radiating warmth from the printer, my new identity stamped across it in deliberate black ink. The chair next to mine, the one with the small family placard, sat conspicuously vacant, just like it had at every important moment they'd ever missed. But staring at that empty space, something fundamental shifted inside me. They believed this moment would shame me. They didn't realize it was revealing them instead. Growing up meant learning to make myself smaller, to fit between the louder personalities that surrounded me. In our Austin home, volume equaled significance, and I was never significant enough to merit noise. I can still hear Mom's heels striking the kitchen tiles whenever Brendan demanded attention. Sharp, immediate, urgent in ways my quieter requests never seemed to be. Vivian received the gentle voice, the reassuring touch on her shoulder, the focused attention that bent the atmosphere of any room toward her gravity. I became the invisible child, the one who wiped up her own spills, prepared her own school lunches, who understood early on that interrupting the conversations flowing around her was pointless. I was 12 when the pattern first crystallized for me. Vivian had an art exhibition at school, student paintings lined up against the gymnasium walls. Mom orbited around her, performing for the neighbors, adjusting non-existent wrinkles in her daughter's dress. Meanwhile, I stood alone in the corner, clutching the certificate I'd received that same morning for placing in a regional science competition. Not one family member had attended. They hadn't even remembered I was competing. Mom swept past me like I was furniture. "Take your sister's jacket," she instructed, pressing the fabric into my hands without making eye contact. I tucked the certificate into my pocket, where it crinkled loudly in the silence. Nobody noticed. Fast forward to my high school graduation. They showed up late, the ceremony already underway, my classmates shifting awkwardly as my family searched for seats. When they called my name, I rose and scanned the crowd for the 4 faces that should have been easiest to find. The family section had exactly 1 empty seat, mine. My siblings had opted for a lake party instead. My parents blamed traffic, though I discovered later they'd made a coffee stop first. I gripped my program, so hard a corner tore away. I swallowed the hurt and lowered myself back down, moving carefully, as if deliberate slowness could somehow conceal the abandonment. University brought no improvement. At Rice, I sent advance notices for weeks before a departmental award ceremony. Vivian responded with a heart emoji. Brendan read the message and never replied. My parents sent a non-committal, "We'll see," 3 days after my initial message. They were no-shows. I spent that evening on the dormitory steps with takeout, my award sitting beside me in its unopened envelope. The older I became, the more I retreated into silence. I discovered that objecting only triggered Mom's signature response. "Stop being so dramatic, Evelyn." Dad would nod his agreement without glancing up from whatever screen held his attention. My objections grew briefer with each passing year until they evaporated completely. The memory that lodged deepest, that I couldn't dislodge, no matter how hard I tried, was the ceremony where I presented my preliminary desalination research. 5 reserved seats, every one of them vacant. I held my folded program, running my thumb over the same crease repeatedly, pretending the emptiness beside me wasn't glaring. My phone vibrated, a photo from Brendan's backyard cookout. "Wish you were here," his text said. The insincerity was palpable. That afternoon taught me exactly where I ranked in the family hierarchy, a shadowy presence at the periphery of their lives, acknowledged only when I demanded nothing. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It accumulated gradually, like water pressure building behind a weakening dam. But when the dam finally broke, the day itself was unremarkable, ordinary, quiet, deceptively mundane. 8 months before my dissertation defense, I distributed the announcement to my family, an official university notice with the date and time printed in stark black letters. I mailed a physical copy to the Austin house, sent text reminders, posted in the family group chat. April 22nd, 3 p.m. I typed clearly. Mom replied hours later with an absent-minded, "So proud, sweetheart." Vivian sent a thumbs-up emoji. Brendan contributed a single word. Nice. I convinced myself their minimal responses were sufficient. Throughout the winter months, I mentioned the date at every Sunday family dinner. Mom acknowledged it with a nod while scrolling through her phone. Dad made an ambiguous sound that might have signaled agreement. Vivian discussed her children's athletic schedules. Brendan returned to his ongoing monologue about grilling techniques. Still, I persisted with reminders. 5 months out, 3 months, 6 weeks, then 2. Each reminder felt like knocking on soundproof glass, completely inaudible from the other side. Then, February arrived, and Brendan published his invitation online. Spring barbecue celebration, the graphics announced. April 22nd, 1 to 6 p.m. I stared at my screen until my vision blurred. When I called him, his confusion sounded genuine. "What time's your thing again?" he asked, as though he hadn't heard it dozens of times. 3 o'clock, I stated flatly. "People can manage both," he countered. "Just swing by afterward." Stanford was 60 minutes away. He understood the logistics perfectly. He simply didn't care. My next call was to Mom. She laughed, a light, dismissive sound. "Sweetheart, you're overreacting. We'll figure it out." But in that moment, I felt it, the quiet, crushing certainty. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't scheduling conflict. This was choice. They were actively choosing someone else, something else. The pattern I'd always known. Final confirmation arrived the day before my defense. Mom answered her phone with party music blaring behind her, her voice barely audible through the laughter. "I'm helping Brendan set up," she explained. "It's chaos over here. What about tomorrow?" I pressed. 3 o'clock, right? "We'll definitely be there," she promised distractedly. Vivian's handling desserts. She disconnected before I could respond. The following afternoon, standing outside Patterson Hall, my phone lit up. "Where are you?" Mom's text asked. "Everyone's at Brendan's." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence expand between us. Heavy, absolute, final. And within that silence, something locked into place with an audible click. I didn't break down in that hallway. I didn't return calls. I didn't justify or explain. I collected my notes, entered the auditorium, and defended 8 years of research to a room conspicuously missing 5 specific faces. When it concluded, when congratulations, Dr. Evelyn Brennan reverberated through the chamber, I registered nothing except an ache so deeply familiar it felt almost comfortable. That evening, while messages from my family accumulated unanswered on my devices, I sat alone in my apartment. The blinds hung half open, desk lamplight spilling across the table, illuminating research papers, my laptop, and the defense program. I smoothed its central crease one final time. Then I opened my laptop and created a digital folder. Transition. No emotion, no hesitation, just a folder, and the first deliberate step toward constructing a life they could no longer access. I began methodically, downloaded the legal name change petition from the county website and printed it. The printer's mechanical hum in the quiet apartment felt unexpectedly grounding. Instructions, required documentation, identification protocols. I highlighted each section with steady, controlled strokes. My hand remained perfectly stable. Next came financial infrastructure. I accessed every account, modifying contact details, archiving statements into my new records folder. I generated 2 spreadsheets, one cataloging every account linked to my old identity, another mapping the transition to my new one. This wasn't vengeance. This was architecture. By midnight, that folder contained more organizational clarity than my family had provided in decades. Morning came early. Cool air, sharp sunlight through the blinds. I prepared coffee, watching steam spiral upward while I reviewed the petition one last time. Then I dressed deliberately, navy blouse, pressed trousers, hair secured neatly, and drove to the county courthouse. The building rose pale and imposing against the sky. Inside, a clerk pushed a stack of forms across the counter. "Complete these," she directed. I found a window seat and began. Line after line, signature after signature, my new identity, Evelyn Morrison, settled into each blank field as though it had always belonged there. When I returned the completed documents, the clerk's stamp hit the top page with a crisp, conclusive sound. "Processing requires several weeks," she informed me. That's acceptable, I replied. Outside, sunlight felt transformed, clearer somehow, less like something requiring permission. The following phase unfolded over quiet days. Email first, a clean address with no family connections. I migrated all research materials to a new cloud storage system, permanently deleted the old one. I archived professional correspondence from colleagues, mentors, collaborators. One folder remained untouched, Ruth, containing photographs of my grandmother and the birthday letters she'd mailed throughout my college years. Her handwriting had always appeared confident, even when mine wavered. By week's end, my digital existence had been completely stripped of the Brennan surname. Physical transition followed. I packed my apartment, books in neat stacks, clothing folded in precise rows, picture frames wrapped face down in paper. The night before the movers arrived, I stood in the living room center, absorbing the refrigerator's soft hum, the faint buzz from a streetlight outside. My phone illuminated repeatedly, calls, messages, desperate attempts to grasp what they'd never actually held. I ignored them all. When the moving truck departed, carrying everything I owned toward Portland, I locked the apartment door and rested my palm against the cool metal briefly. Not sentimentality, just stillness. The northbound journey consumed 2 days. Endless highway stretches, muted radio static, fluorescent-lit rest stops with malfunctioning vending machines. I stopped exclusively for fuel and coffee. Each mile felt like dissolving connections, thin, deteriorating threads falling away in my rearview mirror. Portland welcomed me with overcast skies and gentle rain. Perfect, I thought. A city where silence felt like respiration rather than punishment. My new apartment was compact but luminous, featuring a narrow balcony overlooking a tree-lined quiet street. I positioned my boxes near the windows and opened the one marked work. Research papers, a notebook, one photograph of my grandmother and me at a birthday celebration years past. I pinned it above my desk. The following morning, I entered the environmental consulting firm that had extended an offer months earlier. The receptionist greeted me warmly. New colleagues introduced themselves individually. Nobody inquired about my family. Nobody drew comparisons to siblings. I sat at my new desk, logged into my new system, and felt an unfamiliar, strange steadiness anchor in my chest. Evenings were devoted to completing the quiet work. Driver's license name update, voter registration modification, medical records replacement, emergency contact reassignment, closure of the final bank account bearing the old surname. Each task generated its own small sound, keyboard taps, button clicks, envelope tears. Not theatrical, not triumphant, but precise, controlled mine. Some nights I'd sit at my desk with the window cracked slightly, cool air drifting inside. I'd reach for a form, an invoice, a document, and feel the familiar chest tightness ease incrementally. This time, I'd think, filing another completed page. I'm not repairing what they damaged. Not a vow, merely a boundary, finally articulated. The notification arrived on an overcast morning weeks after I'd established myself in Portland. Your name change petition has received approval, it stated. A simple sentence, a quiet transformation completed. I printed the confirmation, the page still warm as I slid it into a folder marked identity. New documents, driver's license, bank cards, employment records, had already begun updating. Soon, nothing would carry the surname my family had deliberately forgotten. I didn't announce it. I didn't contact anyone. Then the moment arrived when everything converged. Great Aunt Ruth passed away, quietly, peacefully. She'd been among the rare few who'd genuinely seen me, truly recognized me, and I understood I needed to attend. Not for my family's sake, but for hers. The Austin Chapel appeared unchanged from my last visit, polished wood surfaces, soft ambient lighting, air saturated with lily fragrance. I arrived early, settling near the aisle, hands folded around the printed program. The name displayed, Evelyn Morrison, remained foreign to my family, but not to me. Not anymore. They arrived collectively. My mother halted mid-stride upon seeing me. You changed your name. Not inquiry, indictment. My father's jaw clenched. Vivian's expression registered disbelief. Brendan looked physically struck. Their gazes shifted from the program to me and back repeatedly. You should have informed us, Mom whispered. You should have attended. I responded evenly. Her mouth opened to argue, but the chapel attendants signaled for silence. Throughout the service, they observed me more than the ceremony itself. Periodically, Mom's gaze drifted toward me, confusion, frustration, something approaching fear. The fear people experience when familiar geography has been redrawn without consultation. Following the closing hymn, she intercepted me outside. "Evelyn, this isn't fair," she insisted quietly. "We made an error. Families reconcile." I stood beside my rental vehicle, cool wind shifting my coat's edge. "You prioritized a barbecue over my doctorate," I stated. "You didn't forget, you chose." "That's not accurate." "It is," I replied. "And now the systems defining my existence only acknowledge people who appear. You weren't documented. The rest processed automatically." Her expression tightened as comprehension finally registered. No argument could reverse a court record, a state filing, a digital identity. Love could be claimed, but documentation remained immune to guilt. Vivian approached next. "You didn't need to go this far," she protested. "I didn't go far," I corrected. "I went where visibility exists." Brendan remained silent entirely. I entered the car, closed the door, and watched their forms blur through the windshield. They couldn't follow, not legally, not digitally, not emotionally. The life connected to my former name had concluded without ceremony. The one connected to my new name had already commenced. And for the first time, the loss belonged to them, not me. Portland enveloped me the way a gentle night settles over a cooling street, quiet, unhurried, indifferently kind. Months elapsed, and my new life's rhythms established themselves effortlessly. I commuted to work beneath low gray skies. I brewed morning coffee in my compact kitchen, water sounds filling silence rather than fragmenting it. On my desk, water reclamation model drafts spread across the wood in careful arrangements, illuminated by diffuse morning light that rendered everything calmer than I felt internally. Gradually, the stillness ceased feeling alien. My name, Evelyn Morrison, appeared on memoranda and email signatures, on project documentation. Each sighting anchored something deeper inside me. At meetings, colleagues solicited my input without comparative references. After work, coworkers invited coffee outings, or Alex would meet me at a small cafe nestled between brick buildings. He listened actively. He retained details. He asked about the desalination project I'd refined for years, and his interest was authentic, not performed. Some evenings I'd sit on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, the city humming softly in the distance. Rain traced lines down the railing, steady and untroubled. I'd think about that empty chair at my defense, the one I'd stared at momentarily before beginning my presentation. The image still surfaced occasionally, but its form had transformed. No longer an ache, just a memory, small and flat, like a photograph buried at a drawer's back. I didn't hate them. That discovery surprised me. Hatred demanded weight, and I no longer carried theirs. The legal paperwork had accomplished what I never could alone. It carved a clean boundary. Not a barricade, simply a line. On one side, the life where I awaited selection. On the other, the life where I didn't. When I departed the courthouse months earlier, I hadn't been fleeing my family. I'd been walking toward myself, toward an identity belonging to someone who appeared for herself, even when nobody else did. Now, in the soft drizzle of an Oregon evening, I recognized something quieter than forgiveness, simpler than closure. I wasn't missing anymore. I had arrived. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're evidence of where you finally learned to stand. My family spent years overlooking me in spaces I'd worked hard to access. So I constructed a life in a location where presence wasn't negotiable. Now, when I sign my name, Evelyn Morrison, the silence following isn't hollow. It's mine. And some doors remain closed simply because I no longer need what lies behind them.